Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Wait, Annan?
Yeah.
Just a second.
I hear you. Ich kann dich jetzt hören.
Okay, okay. Okay, here we are.
So yeah, let's just start. Thank you for Andrea Linnenkohl for your time to join us this evening as the host and storyteller of Walkie Talkie, the session 4. So Walkie Talkie is a hanging out, telling stories conducted by us, ruangrupa, to connect with some friends where proximity doesn't refer to something geographical or physical. It's about stories on what it means to work and to live together. And this session 4 is Andrea Linnenkohl, our friend, who's the host, both the host and the storyteller. So, and during the briefing a couple of days ago, she said that she would invite somebody that she has been working together for a while, and then she didn't tell me who the guest is, and then it's Andrea who will introduce her. I need to introduce Andrea first, that she is an art and cultural professional based in Kassel, Germany. I hand the ball to Andrea, and then Andrea, it's yours.
Thank you, Andan. Thank you very much for inviting me to be a host for a session of the series Walkie Talkie. And I was super happy to be invited, and I was thinking of Jelena Topikov to be my guest in this session. And Jelena is same as me, from Kassel. She's a philosopher, and she's very experienced in art mediation. She has been working as art mediator since many, many years. And I also know that she's now still working on the subject that combines philosophy with art mediation. And I thought that we use this session to speak about the place where we live, Kassel, to speak about art mediation in general, but also art mediation in particular in Kassel, where Documenta is taking place every 5 years, and where there is also a Kunsthalle, which is named Fridericianum, where is a Kunstverein, the Kasseler Kunstverein, and where are many more locations and venues where art is actually on show. And yeah, maybe we can combine all this a little bit. Jelena, thank you so much to be here today. This is really great. I'm super, super happy. And on a personal note, I know Jelena since the moment I actually moved to Kassel, which was 14 years ago already. And since then, here and there, our ways have been crossed. Yeah. On a professional basis and also privately. So Jelena.
We've known each other since I was 14 or something. Yeah. Time goes by.
Yeah, exactly. I thought I might start with a little story, as this hangout session is about storytelling. I thought I might start with a story that is actually related to my professional life, and which is also related to art mediation, which is very important to say that I'm not an art mediator at all. I am always interested in all kinds of theories of art mediation, as I think this is art mediation is such an important subject in the context of art exhibitions, but I also think that theories and questions around art mediation without art are also interesting, even though I'm not able to actually speak about any theories about it. So, but coming back to the story with which I would like to start our conversation, Jelena, is I have been working as curatorial assistant, also as curator, but especially in the role as curatorial assistant, I have been in the past, I have been asked by a director of an exhibition space to do curatorial tours.
I remember that. Yeah.
Huh?
I remember.
You remember?
And I remember the director. Yeah.
Yeah. And these curatorial tours we usually did like the day after an opening of an exhibition, and they were very good visited. So actually, in this context, which is not a documenta context, tours and art mediation, let's say, events, projects, and so ever were like visited, but not as good visited as the curatorial tour. And this is something very interesting to experience, because the question is why, actually. The specialists and the experts, they are doing the, let's say, professional guided tours. We can also speak about the word guided tours, if this is like the correct term or not. But there were even more visitors interested in the curatorial tours. And I thought, I always ask myself why. And of course, I noticed that the guests and visitors thought that we might have more knowledge than the art mediators, which is strange, because we definitely did not have any better or other knowledge. Maybe other knowledge, but we were definitely not the better mediators. So the questions is like, do visitors and guests of exhibitions make differences between the ones they are talking to, and why, if this might be the case, why? And I know, Jelena, that you are busy with exactly this kind of topic and with this subject. And before diving deep into this, my question to you is
that
I guess
so?
you understand.
Yeah,
you understand this situation, no?
Yeah, I do, and I'm working on stuff like that a bit differently, but I think that happens out of insecurities, because not insecurities per se, but I do believe, and I do believe that I can make that claim given how many guided tours I already did in my life. But we have something in common there. I never understood myself as an art educator or as an art mediator, but more as someone who does that. I would never claim to be an art educator. I didn't study that. I studied philosophy and art history. Yeah, but I would never say I'm an art educator. But that's how I make my money. So we have that in common. And I do believe that it happens out of insecurities, and a special kind of insecurity or unimaginability. I do think that the common visitor of a museum, of an exhibition, especially when it comes to contemporary art, cannot really imagine what it, like they have no imagination or concepts about what actually they're seeking out to do or seeking out to know, what can be known about an art object or about a concept. Like if you go there and then you have no vision about what actually could be interesting about an art object, about an art piece, then you stick to the most objective or most like imagined authoritative thing you might know about it, which is mostly like it can be explained very like every art educator knows the sentence very well and hates it. It's like, what does the artist mean by that? Like, what did he want to say? What did he want to say with this art piece? And if you only believe that what the artist thought about it is the only thing you can know or understand about an art object, then you're missing out a lot. Yeah, like maybe for example, often I'm not really interested in what the artist had to say, or I'm more interested if it's like it's a concept, it makes a systematic point, I can draw a connection to some developments in the art world or to real life, or I understand a theory or a phenomenon better than before through an art piece as through a text. But if you don't believe that that is possible and the only thing real to say about an art piece is what the artist said or meant by it, then you tend to stick to people who represent authorities given by an institution or something. Yeah. And then you can acknowledge that a curator or we all hope for a more qualified native speaker. It's not the case. I'd rather say it now. I'm not a native speaker. Excuse all my grammar and spelling mistakes just right here. But you can grasp that a curator or a director, I can't pull it up, an assistant is more an authority in this context than somebody else. That's something you can't grasp.
Yeah,
when you're
right.
when you're not able to imagine what all the interesting things you can actually know about art or get to know about art or understand about art pieces. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah.
One step back. There is an audience, and this audience decides to visit an exhibition.
Yeah.
What do you think this audience expects? Because it's somehow strange
and contradictory it is. They go into an exhibition and they pay money for a guided tour, and I'm also lacking another term in English for a guided tour, by the way. Yeah, maybe it's complicated, I don't know, but they pay money for someone going through the exhibition with them to explain the art, but at the same time they can't imagine what are possibilities to explain about or to talk about or to discuss about, because they only accept one authority in their minds, and that is what the artist might have said or meant by it. Yeah, or what the curator in like an authorized authority might have want to say and represent with an exhibition like that. It's contradictory.
Yeah. So with what you've just said, we have a lot to do with authorities and with hierarchies, I understand.
Yeah.
And that this also means that, to put it like clearly now, that the visitor seems to be unconsciousness and sees herself or himself in a lower position than the authorities that are connected to the place they are visiting. Another question I have in this context is, why do you think actually all these visitors go to exhibitions if they feel so insecure and might visit something that they beforehand already consider as not understandable?
Maybe just to make that point. Like, and people are contradictory. Maybe they have an idea of what is good culture or something good to do, like going to the theater, going to an exhibition. But it's like, I don't know. I think it might be nice, like, but at least they come, and at least they pay money to book such a tour. So there is some sort of motivation to get to know or see what it is to know about. But at the same time, there's a lot of insecurity about what you actually can know and understand about an art piece.
Yeah. Can we see it as an aim? For me, actually, it is an aim, and maybe for you too, but you will let me know in a second. If, maybe this is also, no, it should be actually the aim to find ways to also give and provide these visitors security and consciousness, so that, let's say, the barriers of these institutions, I have to put something else in. Because I think many people also visit exhibitions because then they can tell someone else that they visited, and that this kind of hires up their, like, that this.
Yeah,
Yes.
there's the same reason why you go into a theater, even though the last time I visited a theater, someone imitated a baby dinosaur, and I thought to myself, I'm never going again here. I'm never going again. But it's the same way. I do believe that. And it might sound rather pessimistic, but I'm not saying something very harsh, actually. You go with some kind of interest. You heard about, someone said it was very interesting and you want to get to know about it, and it's a real motivation. But at the same time, people who are not familiar or not that common in museums, they can accept Picasso or Rembrandt as a real artist, and they can understand why. It's because of the technique, because they did something very pretty. And at the same time, they enter an exhibition for contemporary art and they don't understand the clue anymore. They're not familiar with terms about like conceptual art is. And they all come with a motivation which is admirable, and which I also believe is the main point of art education per se. You try with someone who could never imagine that something that isn't Rembrandt, isn't really art, but was still interested enough to come into the museum to see this exhibition out of whatever reason, yeah. You try to make it easier for them. For example, I did in BA, I wouldn't say like I did a BA in Kassel in something that like it's called art science, but it basically was art history or something closer to that. Yeah. And when someone enters rather clueless, or also with all these other reactions like disgust, not able to understand, it's not a picture, it's a video, it's a photography, why is that art, or something like that. I always try to understand, to give them, like, to explain about them, about methodology or methods, about interpreting. Jesus, I can hear it. I'm a German trying to speak English, but I always try to give them something which they can use in the next time. Like, this is what art historians do to try to find a clue when they first confronted with an art piece. Like, for example, you treat it like a crime scene. Like, why should somebody do that? And I also always try to tell them that something's happening with the sound, that artists are not that, like, kind of crazy nut people that do something out of whatever reasons. They also have, like, real ideas and theories, and it's always something real connected to the world out there somehow, so that they can experience it more like, I don't know, more like an article, more like a book, more like a play or something. Does that answer your question a bit, at least?
Yeah.
I always try to tell them it's not magic, and it's not about being crazy or feeling or seeing something very differently than other people do. It's like, you can always ask serious questions, even if it is, what did the artist want with it, and why should somebody do that? Yeah, why should somebody, I don't know, paint the same picture of a mountain over and over and over again? Is there real, understandable, common motivation behind that? Or is it just like out of fun or craziness? Do they do something systematic or not? Even if it is disgusting me, or I don't get it, why do I don't get it? And why I'm, like, feeling triggered by it or something. It's not supposed to be pretty, and
yeah. When to also bring, like, ruangrupa, who actually invited us today, in our dialogue a bit. Like, for ruangrupa, it's like artistic praxis to combine art and life, and to actually, this then also means that all the Picassos and all the Rembrandts and all the other examples you have just mentioned, and of course, in particular, also the contemporary art world, should be seen as something of our daily life, and as something that is not part of a hierarchy kind of level, but that we all, and that all this is something that we live in, and that everybody should be able to participate in it. So and I think the many ways of art mediation practices kind of tried this out already. Mm-hmm. This also means, like, starting a guided tour with asking the visitor, for example, instead of telling the visitor what they see and give some more background information, asking the visitor what they see, actually. And sometimes I heard that visitors might get annoyed of this, because they because what you said, like, you just said something like, at least there is interest, and at least there are people who also pay for art mediation, which is very important also. But then they don't expect to be asked what they see, how to deal with it. And this is
like I have to, but there's like, I'm trying to answer that question with a bit of a story myself, and it's basically my story. Yeah. Okay, what happened to me and what my background is, like I already said, I don't understand myself as an art educator or mediator. That's just what I do. But I love to do it. It is fun, and it's like, I think it's an admirable job to do. But what happened to me is it was also my first job. Yeah, it was the first thing I ever did. And the first thing I ever earned some kind of money with, or the first job I ever had, was as a child with 13, doing guided tours in a program invented by René Bloch, who was the former director of Kunsthalle Friedrichshain in Kassel. He said, okay, how to get children into our exhibitions. They're like, I don't know. He mostly did something like, he was a fan of Fluxus, and I know that's why you're here too, because I read your master's thesis in parts, at least. Yeah. And like, you have something like Fluxus, like this whole thing. Yeah, you have boys and all these like very theoretical, what is art at all, and how do we get to know art, and how do we even recognize art when we're not in a museum, and like the whole Fluxus thing. And he said, okay, how to get children into there. And maybe it's not the best way to put children in there, a group of children with another adult. Maybe it needs to be explained by another child. And that was me and my friend Saskia Husemann. Yeah. And that was my first job. And after that, I also studied. Like, I grew up, I was 13 back then, 13 or 14 or something. That was my first job. And then I studied art history and philosophy, mostly philosophy. But I was born and raised in Kassel. Like, Documenta came with mother milk. It's something I very much like. You can't grow up here without accepting that as part of your own history or the identity of your town or something like that. And then I applied for doing guided tours, which were named differently back then, as always, with new Documenta, new education concepts and names for the things. And then I applied for Documenta 13, doing guided tours. And then for Documenta 14, it was the last time I did guided tours for Documenta. And at Documenta 14, I already studied philosophy, and I came across a philosopher named Miranda Fricke, and she distinguishes two, like, to make it very simple, she distinguishes two kinds of genuine epistemic injustice. And when you hear something like epistemic injustice, you might think it's about, I don't know, money and school or access to information or something, but she very much thinks it's something differently. One kind of epistemic injustice she distinguishes as a phenomenon in the world is something she calls testimonial injustice. And it's basically when prejudice, if you get me, in a hearer causes him or her to give a deflated level of credibility to a speaker. That's what testimonial injustice is. And she also makes a very, very valid and solid point about these prejudice in hearers are not something, need not to be very something conscious. It can also be implicit biases or something. You need not to be a racist to not believe a Black person. But we live in a culture and in a structure where you nonetheless, even though you don't have any racist beliefs or sexist beliefs, you nonetheless give a little bit of less credibility, for example, to a tiny girl who looks very young. Yeah. And then Documenta 14 happened, and I basically thought, yeah, fuck, that's what's happening here. That is what is happening. It happened to me before, I'm so sure. And I did it before. Like, I committed testimonial injustice to someone else. And to really grasp the whole thing, even though there's not much time to explain like this whole philosophical theory here, or this phenomenon, there's also another kind of epistemic injustice, which he calls hermeneutical injustice, but that would go too far, is that if you treat someone like that, if you give someone less credibility than otherwise you would have without some implicit biases or prejudice, I don't know, yeah, changing your perception of someone or of someone's credibility, yeah, then it's basically like hitting him or her in the face, because you undermine someone's rationality, because you don't accept him or her as a giver of knowledge. And if that's her point, it's like, if knowledge, having knowledge and being an informer and giving knowledge to other people is basically what makes us human, what distinguishes us from everybody else, what makes us rational, then undermining someone in that very capacity to give knowledge without a whatever reason, yeah, then you undermine him as a human being in his rationality. That's her whole point. And her examples for that is, like, she has always examples from literature, is now I don't like, one is like How to Kill a Mockingbird, what happened to Tom Robinson in this very famous story. There's a really racist jury who doesn't believe him. They can't believe him. They're unable, because of their racial perception of him, to believe in what he says, and very bad consequences. But another example is The Talented Mr. Ripley, where Herbert Greenleaf tells his daughter-in-law, or about to be daughter-in-law, Marge, there's female intuition and there's facts, because she tries to explain that Ripley is the killer of Dickie, like the whole story, yeah? And then I, like, really, Documenta 14 happened, and I thought, like, basically, that is what is happening here, and you can know it. And if you accept that as a phenomenon, not only in the world, that it happens all the time, even without motivation for it, unconsciously it happens. Every time you meet someone, you have to attribute or check out his credibility. If he or her tells you something, somehow you have to do it. Yeah, even if it's just contacts. If you ask me when a train is leaving, or when the train is about to come, and I say, or you ask me, when you would ask me now about the time, and I would say it's 10 o'clock in the evening, you would say, like, that's not possible. There's still light out there. And you would immediately doubt my credibility or know that something is fishy. Yeah.
I might.
Yeah. Might. Yeah. Okay. And then Documenta 14 happened, and I say that's what I'm doing every time a member of the Lions Club comes to a guided tour of me. Like, I can't, or there's a Rotaria club in Germany and everywhere else in the world, something very famous, something I have a lot of prejudice about, Lions Club and Rotaria Club. And every time they enter, and I gave them a level, like a deflated level of credibility when I'm trying to discuss with them about art. And sometimes people surprise you. That's one example when, like, I'm sure I committed testimonial injustice. Or teenagers, like, completely uninterested. Their teacher dragged them there. They have no interest in anything at all. And then I thought, like, yeah, I can't help you anymore. There's nothing I could accept from you that you could possibly say could be interesting for me. Like not consciously, probably, maybe sometimes. And other times I really realized that happened to me is, for example, I remember very well Documenta 14, and I did a guided tour and I talked about something, a word I can never pull off in English, so please forgive me. I talked about iconography. Sounds like I'm saying pornography, but it's not. Iconography. Is it right? Yeah. I talked about how something like that could, like how an iconography, now I'm really making a fool of myself, could be understood when it comes to contemporary art. So I'm in, I don't know, the Neue Galerie, Neue Galerie, and talking about this concept of art education for, I don't know, 20 minutes, and then discussing it with the group. And then at the end of the guided tour, a male white, the usual kind, like, I don't know, if I would, like, it's also pessimistic, but you, everyone knows them, yeah, tells me, it's very sweet what you did there, darling, but the next time you should learn a bit more about the democracy in Germany. And I thought, as I said, okay, I didn't say what the fuck, but I thought, what the fuck? I thought, like, what does democracy had to do with my speech on iconography, and how could it be like spelled out in contemporary art? What could be iconography in contemporary art? And then I asked him, what?
Was he wanted to be asked? Or
then I said, okay, could you please, in front of the whole group, could you please explain what you mean by that? And then he said, no, I don't want to, but I really advise you, darling, to learn a bit more about democracy. And I was like, okay. And then what happened basically is like he did that to me. He didn't want to answer questions, and he did it in front of the whole group. And I could promise you, I cannot prove it, of course, but I could promise you every single person in this whole group started to doubt me somehow, or thought, oh shit, maybe she missed out. Or, yeah. And I do believe that the basic translation of this, some sort of microaggression against me or something, yeah, was, young girl, what can you actually, like, maybe you felt provoked about something, yeah. And I do think, like, when it comes to you, we talked about how does these things happen, and we talked about ruangrupa, and how can we get to a world where we can all share and transmit knowledge without prejudice, or without microaggressions, or without concepts of authority and power, yeah. And I admire that very much, and I'm looking forward to Documenta 15 very much, because I think I still do have a lot to learn. I'm very impressed by their concepts and their way of making decisions, for example, like as a community. Yeah, I'm very impressed by the whole concept of ruangrupa and what they try to do. But for me, for example, we do not live in this world yet. We don't. We simply don't. But one step for me to get to a better grasp of what's happening in these guided tours, with what I committed, what happened to me, was to have this phenomenon at hand and understanding what happens there. Because of course, after this guided tour, for example, I went out and thought, like, yeah, fuck. What did he mean by that? I immediately started doubting myself. Should I have said something more about democracy in Germany? And still no clue what that had to do with what we talked about. Yeah. But I doubted myself and I felt insecure. But it helped me, and it also helps to have a wording or a phenomenon you can grasp in these sorts of situations to understand what is happening there, what probably has nothing to do with which knowledge is actually transmitted, and what people are actually telling each other. It's more about, I don't know, power or authority, or how you have to imagine that someone actually has the expertise to tell you something. You have to believe that this person is competent and sincere to give him credibility. Yeah. And it really helped me. And then when you tell, like, the whole thing is about telling stories, and it's something I really did do to get to a place where there's a more objective and about telling and getting to know and understanding each other atmosphere. It helped me to have this concept at hand and to work with it, but it also changed my way of going into the situations. I developed tricks to, I wouldn't say to trick people, that makes me sound harsh, but for example, it's not the case. I don't know, 1 meter, 50 centimeters or something more, not very much more. I look so much younger than I am, and I'm a woman. And if I just would ignore that fact and then say, for example, like, people are going to believe me because I'm telling them what I know and what is the truth and what is interesting about the art pieces or the curatorial aspect or this exhibition, and they would just see that is the truth and nothing else, no social differences, then I would lie to myself. So I developed tricks that some sort of situations don't happen to me anymore. For example, I know how I look and I know my name. The countless situations of where I introduced myself as Jelena Tupikov, and people after a guided tour, came to me and said, "Oh, your German is so good already. That's admirable. Where from Russia are you actually from? Where did you study? Or how old are you, by the way?" And I can skip all that by introducing myself as, for example, as Jelena Tupikov, and then I always make a joke and say, "I'm so much older than I look like." And never happened to me again, because every male, white, arrogant person in there, they're really starting to doubt. Like, even though it's clear I'm not 60, they start to think, shit, she could be exceptionally older than she looks like, and they get irritated. And it's not that I'm tiny and that I look long is not such an issue anymore, for example, something like that. And that's a sort of storytelling. So that was a really long speech. I'm sorry, but that's where I come from, and that's where I deal. That's what I do. Yeah. Like, right now, I'm writing my master's thesis about epistemic injustice in contemporary art education.
I'm so happy that you brought this up, and I can immediately second this, even though I have never been working as in the mediation field. But when I was actually giving tours, the so-called curatorial tours I was speaking about earlier, together with the director, then also it was like very often the case that the visitors tried to become part of his group walking through the exhibition, rather than going with me for the same reasons that you just said. So it was even important that the director, who was male and white, actually needed to say, like, she is doing this as good as I am. Please, let's divide the group in two. And it would be much nicer for everybody to be like in a smaller group. Yeah. So, and because he said this, I think.
Yeah, but also, like, imagine you entering a field, whatever it is, like, I don't know, some sort of science, physics, like you don't know anything about that. You don't know how they make decisions, how value judgments are made. You don't have any like skills or tools to make a qualified physics, math value judgment when you like maybe read a text or a paper about some special theory. Imagine that. But you can still grasp that someone is an expert about physics. That's a concept you can grasp. You can identify an expert. Yeah. And yet now imagine being a visitor, not very familiar with contemporary art or the last 100 years of what happened in art. Yeah, something never heard about. I don't know. Kossuth, boys never heard about. Yeah, didn't really get it. Crazy, not people, artist people. And then you enter an exhibition, but you see that within this context of institution, someone has the authority. You can grasp what a director is or what a curator is, or at least that it is a person with authority, and then you give them also, you also accept their epistemic authority, even though you don't know, you have not the slightest clue how this authority, this epistemic authority when it comes to art is actually made and differentiated. And I still do believe that, not in every case, maybe I like sometimes you always win people over, and it would be too harsh and too simple to say that male white people have nothing to say anymore and that they get the credibility right away, they don't have any, like, that's too simple, and that's not the world I'm living either. But I still do believe that when you put like the same thing, when you put like 30 people in front of me in the museum and they have to make a decision of either walking with the curator or the director, which in this time is also a male white person, yeah, they would rather go with him than with me. Yeah, probably. And I can feel and I can see when they doubt me. And then you develop tricks to, I don't know, confuse them or don't make them doubt you so much. But it's still the same thing. It's like after a guided tour, when I ask myself, when the only feedback is, your German is so very good. Jesus, and where in Russia are you from? Are you from actually? Yeah? Just because of my name, then I do ask myself, is there something else besides that I see, like that they acknowledge that I can, I don't know, speak with German very well? Yeah. Mm. There's something in the guided tour they actually took with them, some sort of information, clue, and understanding about the artist, the art pieces, or something else? Or is there just like some sort, like, yeah, it has something to do with the credibility you subscribe to someone. It just has. And I ask myself that. If the only thing you can say is your German is very good and where in Russia you are from, what actually happened in the last hour and what you took, what might have the person like that took from there. I don't know. I do.
Yeah. What you say raises so many questions. It's and in particular, it raises questions that, in the sense of how to find ways to be really so to not stop respecting the visitor. This is one thing, of course, and how to find ways to avoid these situations that you have described, if it's at all possible. I don't know.
It is.
But of course, we need to work on finding those ways, I think. But I also wanted to add something else to what we both just shared. Like when you said, with regard to the director and the situation that visitors decide rather to go with the director than with either the assistant, the curatorial assistant, or the mediator. This has, of course, also something to do that the directors usually are persons of public interest. They are already known. They have been in the newspaper. They are some kind of, in some cases, they are some kind of pop stars. It depends on from which institution they are from also. And of course, it depends on their own behavior and so on and so forth. In the framework actually of Documenta, you can easily say that in the history of Documenta, and therefore is Catherine David and Caroline Christoph Bagadzhiev as the only women in the history of the artistic directorship, they were also pop stars. And like everybody was looking, you know, to them, if not up to them. And this is going to change with ruangrupa as a collective, as a group. And also, I think with ruangrupa, because they are not coming from the...
If you would ask them, it's an interesting question, and it's something that I can only ask them for, like a couple of them. Ask them how people immediately, like when they were in Kassel, and I bet they have an answer. Yeah, ask them if people started to treat them differently as soon as they realized they're the new directors and curators of Documenta.
Yes, let's ask.
Yeah.
Let's ask. I imagine in Kassel this is the case, but this needs to be asked, you're right. And maybe somewhere else too, yes, right. But still, I think that it's better to be 9 or 10 than 1 to deal with this situation. But this is really something interesting, and let's not forget to ask.
Yeah, let's ask. Like I'm sure we've talked about, you and me, we've talked about that before, and it's a very, very interesting thing. Like it's an example, it's a test basically. Wherever you are in the world, wherever I went, yeah, traveling somewhere, yeah. Imagine let's in the plane and people ask me where I'm from, and I say Kassel in Germany. It's either, oh yeah, Kassel Documenta, and you immediately know the person in front of you has something to do with art, is at least basically interested, or is somewhere from the art world, because they immediately ask about Documenta, or no, it's Documenta, or they say Kassel, and you have to say, yeah, it's near Frankfurt. But you know, just by saying I'm from Kassel, or I live there, when the people ask about Documenta right away, you know they are somehow involved in the art world. And otherwise they have no clue where this tiny town is. And you have to explain it's near Frankfurt. Yeah. But ask ruangrupa. I do believe that every time they say I'm from Documenta, people start to also treat them differently, and a bit of pop star. Or the tons and tons of curators in the making, artists, immediately try to get to know them. Yeah. I bet.
Yeah.
But I can, I remember the last curator of Documenta 14, and yeah, he was like, he's here. The pop star is here somewhere. Yeah. I remember that,
Yeah. This was also the case with Caroline, actually, and also with Roger and Ruth. It was also like people tried to find out where they live. We're totally excited to see.
12, I was 19, and I didn't the first real Documenta I remember very vividly, but I was still in school, so I got to know them. Also because their children went to my school, but I didn't experience that at the time, the pop star thingy, because I was.
I'm sure this has something to do with age.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is not exactly what you are working on at the moment, but it is part of the entire theory, I would say. Like the artistic directorship, the artistic director of a documenta is seen as someone like with a lot of knowledge, with a lot of power, with a lot of influence.
Maybe there could be a case made why a figure like that or a group like that has a lot of authority or power, or their experience very interesting. But I do think maybe a case could be made like that, but it also has something to do with Kassel and the history of documenta, for example, and the art world. Like, it's still the biggest job, and as soon as you are somehow involved in the art world, even if you're just in a tiny gallery in Buxtehude, you think, yeah, you can grasp that's an insane job to do, a documenta. It's an insane job, but it's a huge, and of course people who are that interesting even within the art world are experienced more cool, or we are all human. They are a bit more, it's more like a pop star phenomenon than, I would say, something with authority per se. Because as soon as you ask yourself, do I really want to be as I am, the only one person, even with a career or whatever, do I want to be the voice? Or is it even possible as one person in this world to give a very holistic, a very honest picture about what contemporary art is about in these days, or heading somewhere? It's an insane job. Nobody really sane would say, yeah, that's the job I want to do. It's like going to the moon or something. Yeah. And then and then also maybe about, yeah, fuck, she or he is doing it, or the group is doing it, like give a perspective on contemporary art and the world we are living. And it takes guts. So maybe they're also cool because it's an insane job and it takes guts.
Sure, and I think it's for everybody, like for ruangrupa now, but also for all the ones who have been there before. Of course, always something like a try, and there was always the idea of changing direction also a bit. It's not about fulfilling expectations, and I think if this should be actually the aim, kind of to fulfill these kind of expectations, this would be really crazy. And
they all try to invent the wheel a little differently. If you really honest, yeah, why not? Still, like, even if that's the case, it takes a lot of guts. Like, for example, as soon as you start to work in a field or in a museum, people always think like, yeah, what these people do, they're deciding for some interesting artist, and then they get the pictures and then they hang them up and that's it. But as soon as you start to work in a museum or in a gallery or something else, you know what what a job it is and how many steps need to be taken to come to a real exhibition. How many steps, decisions, ideas, discussions, how many people are involved? Architects, assistants, I can't pull it off. Curatorial
assistant?
Ja, ich kann kuratorische Assistenten nicht auf Englisch sagen, ich weiß nicht mehr. Genau, yeah. And then imagine you have a grasp or an idea of what kind of insane job it actually is, and then doing a documenta which tries to come up with new concepts of art education, with new concepts about the world or how we should perceive the world, with new concepts that we can all live in a world where where we can actually develop something to get to know each other and tell and hear things more objective as people in this world and not as, I don't know, women or men or race or something. Yeah, like more objectively. Doesn't matter if you, I don't know, you're cleaning houses or you director, we can all tell each other the same things as its concepts. It's about the world we live in, it's about the society we live in, it's about value judgments, it's about, yeah, ideas about the future, how the world could be, and also a comment on what contemporary art is these days. Nobody.
And
yeah. And
yeah,
did I
and
find something? Yeah. It's
yeah,
not a job I
something,
would like to have, for example.
yeah,
To
but
teach.
and
Yeah.
because the visitor, this is it. I mean, we spoke a lot about visitors and the perspective from the visitor to other people involved in exhibitions. And now it's the question also to how to really include the visitor in all this, to be part of it, really, like to be actually part of the entire project and enterprise, and to also explain to the visitor that it's not her or him being there for a moment,
not to be yes. So to make decisions about what kind of world we live in and what kind of art we want there, or concepts or education to really represent who we are or what it should be like. I know, and that's even more difficult. For me, it really was like having a phenomenon I can understand and grasp and trying to change my attitude, trying to commit less testimony injustice, for example, or identifying it in a situation like that. But of course, during all my research, for example, like we already talked about Documenta 12, and this Documenta really did something for art education in the whole world.
Yeah, Jelena, I have to interrupt you for a second. I just received a sign that we have.
Yeah,
right.
But of course, I want to mention one more author who really gave me a clue how could something like that look like, and it's Nora Stamfeld. And her, Nora, if you're looking, yeah, advertisement here. Yeah. Okay, the time is over.
Time is actually over, and there's time is over. And the thing is that we all together, all of us, in what position, situation we are, should try to find actually ways to combine these groups we were speaking about, and to get together a bit better. And hopefully there will be no other people kind of speaking badly about the ones who are trying to do art mediation. This is actually known, and this should be like also like a big aim of all of us.
Finishing words with that would be something like, it's still a job which isn't very well understood. And it comes together with what we talked about in the beginning. Maybe that's a nice ending for the story. If you can't understand how much work it takes to prepare for something like that, and to really give people, like that's something I'm leaning from Gila Kolb, if she hearing too, to really give people tools to understand art better, to be able to go into a gallery or in a museum on their own and not being helpless because they can't imagine what actually could be interesting and now to know or to get to know about an art piece. Yeah, then yeah, people don't understand the job very well, and therefore it's not very high in the hierarchy of jobs to do, because they also can't imagine what it takes to actually do this job, to be an art educator, how much is involved.
Yeah. Maybe this should be made much more open.
There
Also.
are a lot of people who are trying that these days. Yeah. And a lot of people fighting for a better understanding of the job as well. And how we could create it more democratic, with more epistemic friction and with more other sorts of decision making to involve, to reduce differences about authority and institution and people who watch the art, like who look at the art pieces in our works.
Yeah.
To not make the distinction anymore between a visitor who consumes something and someone who explains something.
Right. Right. Let's go for it.
Let's go for it. But there are a lot of people who are already fighting for that.
Yeah. Then let's
like, I won't name them yet because then I forget sometimes. If I get someone right, and I'm fucked. Yeah, I wouldn't.
Yeah. No, we can name them in other occasions, and for now it's just Jelena. Thank you so much. It has been great speaking to you as always. As always. And I hope that all the ones who joined us, we don't see, but that they also kind of enjoyed it a little bit.
Okay.
So thanks again.
And thank you, Andrea Linnenkohl and Jelena. Thank you for joining this Walkie Talkie session 4. It's an amazing stories to hear, and then I'm pretty sure we'll have more stories in the next Walkie Talkie, and also we'll have more stories when we meet in person, not in a virtual room.
Always
so
yeah.
Right? Yeah. I'm not going to make any conclusion.
Right?
Haro? Yeah.
It's always the 15th of a month. Maybe that's nice to say
at
the end of
it's always on the 15th of the month. This is the 4th one. Yeah, and we'll have next one will be in September 15th. And thank you so much again. I'm not going to make any conclusion of your stories. I'm not going to reduce it by making conclusions. But thanks a lot for your time and for your availability for this Walkie Talkie. And see you next time, and see you in person. Thank you so much for ruangrupa and Good School. And also thank you for Adi Brata who's arranging the technical matters.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you, Anna.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you, Jelena.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Ciao to everybody. Ciao.